room was changing again. The walls of Chuckles creaked and groaned as if the building itself was breathing, alive with malice. The laughter from the shadowy audience grew quieter, but the tension in the air was thicker than ever. Emma clutched her flashlight, its beam flickering and weak, casting distorted shadows on the warped walls. Suddenly, Lisa gasped, pointing to the stage. "Look! The curtains! They're moving again!" Everyone turned toward the stage. The heavy red curtains rippled unnaturally, as if something massive was slithering behind them. The eerie glow from behind the curtains intensified, casting monstrous silhouettes that twisted and writhed like a nightmare made real. Jake stumbled forward, his voice hoarse with fear. "I'm not letting this thing win!" He grabbed a broken chair leg and stepped closer to the stage. But before he could reach the steps, the spotlight snapped back on, illuminating the center of the stage. The figure of Lenny Smiles returned, now fully formed. His appearance was grotesque. His grin stretched impossibly wide, his glowing eyes piercing through the darkness. His voice was distorted, bouncing unnaturally around the room. "Ah, my stars of the show are here. Let's give them an unforgettable performance." The stage floor began to shake violently. A low, guttural sound echoed as a massive hand, clawed and skeletal, reached out from behind the curtain. It slammed down onto the stage with a thunderous crash. The group screamed as the hand began pulling the curtains apart, revealing something far worse than any of them could have imagined. Rows of shadowy figures stood behind the curtain, an entire audience of ghostly forms. Each one had a face twisted into an eternal scream, their hollow eyes glowing red. But their mouths didn't move as the laughter continued, louder and more horrifying than ever. Emma pulled on Jake's arm, her voice frantic. "We need to go, now!" But every exit was gone, the walls around them closing in, pulsating as if alive. The glowing sign above the stage flickered, changing again. It now read, "Welcome to the Eternal Show." Jake turned back to the stage, his eyes wide. "We're not getting out of here, are we?" Before Emma could respond, Lenny's booming voice cut through the cacophony. "Tonight's act isn't just for laughs, it's forever." The spotlight shifted, landing squarely on the group. The ghostly audience erupted into cheers, their applause thunderous and deafening. One by one, the friends began to feel their bodies grow cold and transparent, their forms dissolving as if they were being absorbed into the stage. Emma's final scream was drowned out by the laughter as the curtains closed once again, leaving the club silent and still. As the curtains closed with a resounding thud, an eerie silence enveloped the room. The glowing sign, "Welcome to the Eternal Show," cast a dim, pulsing light on the group's fading forms. Emma clutched at her chest, struggling to breathe as her legs turned translucent. Jake desperately swung the broken chair leg at the encroaching darkness, but it passed through as though nothing was there. "We're not just trapped," Emma gasped, her voice barely audible. "We're being erased." Lisa whimpered, tears streaming down her face as she stared at her hands disappearing before her eyes. The ghostly audience began to stand, moving in unison, their hollow eyes fixed on the stage, their applause echoing louder and louder. It was as if they were summoning something or someone. Suddenly, the stage lights blazed to life, blindingly bright. A new figure emerged, towering and faceless, cloaked in an ever-shifting veil of shadow. Its presence exuded an overwhelming sense of dread. The audience fell silent, bowing their heads as the entity stepped forward. "You dared to mock my domain!" the figure's voice boomed, vibrating through the room. "Now, you belong to it!" Sam, still clutching Emma's arm, shouted over the deafening hum, "Fight it! Don't give in!" But his voice was drowned out as the room twisted and warped. The friends were dragged inch by inch toward the stage, their translucent forms glowing faintly in the oppressive red light. Jake, his face set with grim determination, turned to Emma. "If this is a show, maybe we can end it." "How?" Emma asked, her voice breaking. Jake didn't answer. He dropped the chair leg and lunged for the stage, clawing at the glowing sign above. The light seared his hands, but he didn't stop. The sign shattered, spraying sparks into the darkness. The laughter ceased. The room froze. For a moment, it seemed like they had won, but then the towering figure let out a low, guttural laugh. The curtain may fall, but the show is eternal. The room imploded into blackness, swallowing the group whole. Their screams echoed, growing faint as they disappeared into the void. And then, just as suddenly as it began, everything was silent. Chuckles stood empty once more. The broken sign above the entrance flickered briefly before shutting off completely. From within the darkness, a faint giggle echoed, a sinister reminder that the show, indeed, was eternal. The silence in Chuckles was broken by the faint sound of distant footsteps. Outside, the night was still, but the faint giggle from within the club seemed to echo endlessly, spreading across the empty streets. Inside the void, the friends floated in darkness, their forms faint outlines of who they once were. Emma felt an overwhelming coldness seep into her bones, her voice caught in her throat. "Is this it?" she whispered. "Is this how it ends?" Jake's voice came through, a faint yet steady presence. "No. If this is a show, there has to be an audience. And if there's an audience, there's a way to stop it." From the darkness, faint lights began to glow. Rows of ghostly faces emerged, watching intently. This time, their expressions weren't twisted with mockery or glee. They seemed expectant, almost hopeful. Lisa shivered as the silhouettes of the audience grew clearer. "Why are they just staring?" she asked, her voice trembling. A faint hum began to rise, building into a melody, a distorted, eerie tune that felt familiar, yet distant. The ghostly audience began to sway, their hollow eyes glinting with faint traces of humanity. Jake realized it first. "They're trapped too." His voice broke with a mix of realization and despair. "They were like us once, but they never found a way out." Emma clenched her fists, determination returning to her. "Then we have to find a way for them and for us." A flicker of light appeared in the distance, illuminating a path. The friends exchanged glances and began to move toward it, their fading forms solidifying slightly with each step. The ghostly audience watched, their silent encouragement almost tangible. But the towering figure loomed again, its presence a suffocating shadow. "You can't escape," it growled. "The show is eternal." Jake turned back, gripping Emma's hand tightly. "Then we'll rewrite the script." The light ahead grew brighter, but so did the figure's oppressive shadow. The friends braced themselves for what lay ahead, knowing that the final act was yet to come. As the friends pushed forward, the light ahead seemed to pulse, as if alive and beckoning them closer. Every step felt heavier, the weight of the shadow figure's presence pressing down on them. Emma's voice cut through the tension, steady and resolute. "We're rewriting the story, remember? It doesn't end like this." Behind them, the shadow figure growled, its tendrils stretching forward like claws, trying to pull them back. "The show must go on!" its voice thundered, shaking the glowing path. But the friends held on to each other, their determination a shield against the oppressive darkness. The ghostly audience began to shift, their hollow eyes now reflecting the light ahead. One by one, faint whispers emerged from the silence, words of encouragement, hope, and longing. It was as if the audience's spirits were lending their strength to the friends. Lisa gasped, pointing ahead. "The light! It's opening!" The faint glow had morphed into a swirling portal, its golden radiance promising escape. But as they approached, the path beneath them began to crack and crumble. The shadow figure surged forward, its monstrous form enveloping the void. "You think you can escape? The curtain never falls!" Jake, his voice shaking but determined, shouted back, "This time, it does!" The final confrontation was near, the light growing brighter, the darkness closing in. It was now or never. Would the friends break free, or would they forever be part of the eternal show? The friends stood at the edge of the crumbling path, the golden portal swirling with an almost magnetic pull. The shadow figure surged forward, its tendrils now an inescapable web of darkness. The friends exchanged a look. This was it. There was no going back. Jake stepped forward, turning to the others. "We've come too far to stop now." Emma nodded, her face resolute. "Together or not at all." As the friends took their final steps toward the portal, the shadow figure roared with rage, the void shaking violently. The glowing path shattered completely, leaving them suspended in the air. Tendrils of darkness lashed out, wrapping around their limbs and pulling them backward. The ghostly audience erupted into a chorus of whispers, their voices rising to a crescendo. The glowing portal pulsed brighter, its golden light now searing through the darkness. The audience's eyes glowed intensely as their whispers transformed into a chant, a single word, repeated over and over, "Freedom." Emma screamed, reaching for the portal as the shadow figure's grip tightened. "We won't be part of your show!" With one final burst of strength, the friends pushed forward, the light from the portal enveloping them. The shadow figure howled in defeat, its monstrous form dissolving into the void. The ghostly audience began to fade, their twisted faces softening into peaceful expressions as the portal consumed the darkness entirely. The next thing the friends knew, they were outside Chuckles, lying on the cold pavement under the pale light of dawn. The nightclub stood silent and decrepit, its once menacing aura now lifeless. The sign above the entrance was gone, replaced by a blank, rusted frame. Lisa sat up, her voice trembling. "Did we make it?" Emma looked at the others, her face pale but alive. "We're out," she whispered. And so are they. The group stood in silence, the weight of their escape settling in. As they walked away from Chuckles, the faintest hint of a giggle echoed from within, but this time it carried no malice, only the lingering memory of a story rewritten.